An average day in the Emperor's light. The bell rang at the 3rd hour of false dawn, its iron throat howling through the scholar progenium like a wounded beast. Tertius Hale woke before it finished ringing. He always did. The dormitory was cold, as it always was. Stone walls wept condensation, and the air tasted of incense and old fear. 32 boys slept in rigid rows, identical grey blankets pulled tight to regulation height. No one moved after the bell. Movement before the 2nd ring was punishment. Movement after the 3rd was heresy. Tertius lay still, staring at the ceiling where the aquila had been carved directly into the stone, its wings stretched wide, its eyes gouged deep enough to cast shadows. He whispered the litany of waking under his breath, careful not to let his lips move. I rise to serve. I breathe by his will. I endure because he commands it. The 2nd bell rang. They rose as one. Boots hit the floor in perfect unison. Grey tunics were donned, collars sealed. Each boy checked the seals of the one next to him. No warmth allowed, no kindness, only correctness. A missed seal meant lashes for both. Tertius's fingers were quick and practiced. He checked Joran's collar, then offered his own throat without looking. Joran's hands trembled. They always did. "You will be still," Tertius whispered, barely audible. Joran swallowed and fixed the seal. The 3rd bell rang. They marched, lessons in truth. The Hall of Doctrine was vast enough to swallow cities. Its ceiling vanished into smoke, where lumen strips burned behind iron grates like captive stars. Statues of imperial saints lined the walls. Martyrs flayed, burned, crucified, atomized, each carved at the moment of their greatest devotion. The boys knelt. The preceptor entered without ceremony. Preceptor Kyle was not tall nor broad. His authority came from the rosette at his throat, half hidden beneath layers of red and black robes. An inquisitorial rosette. Real. Old. Its edges were worn smooth by centuries of use. Some boys tried not to stare. They failed. Kyle's augmetic eye clicked as it focused. His gaze passed over them like a blade. "Today," he said, voice dry as parchment, "we will discuss lies." A servitor was wheeled forward. It had once been a man. Now it was mostly metal, skin stretched thin over a skull reinforced with adamantium struts. Its mouth worked soundlessly, vocal cords long since removed. "This subject," Kyle continued, "was a clerk. He falsified cargo records. 3 decimal places. The error diverted rations from a hive sub-level." Kyle paused. 137,000 died. The servitor's restraints were released. It fell forward, crawling. "Is this man evil?" Kyle asked. Silence. Tertius felt the question settle in his chest like a weight. "No," said a boy on the far left. "He did not intend harm." Kyle nodded. A gesture. A servo skull descended and fired a single shot into the boy's head. The body slumped forward. Blood pooled between the prayer etchings on the floor. Kyle did not look at the corpse. "Intent is irrelevant," he said. "Outcome is truth." His augmetic eye turned toward Tertius. "You hail?" Tertius rose to one knee. "Yes, preceptor." "Is he evil?" Tertius looked at the servitor, at the shaking limbs, at the data spike hammered through its skull. "Yes," he said, "because the Imperium suffered." Kyle smiled faintly. "Correct." The servitor screamed as the electro-flails activated. Tertius did not look away. Recreation lasted 1 hour. It consisted of combat. The boys were taken to the Hall of Blades, where the floor was sanded stone and the walls were pitted with old impacts. Practice weapons were issued: shock batons, weighted staves, mono-edged knives with the edges dulled just enough to avoid accidental fatalities. Accidental. Tertius was paired with Joran. Again. Joran's hands shook as he raised his baton. "You will strike," the drill abbot barked, "or you will be struck harder." Joran hesitated. Tertius stepped forward and struck first. The baton cracked across Joran's ribs. Joran screamed and fell. The abbot nodded approvingly. "Finish." Tertius hesitated for half a second too long. Pain exploded across his back as the abbot's lash bit deep. "Mercy is corruption," the abbot snarled. Tertius finished it. When it was over, Joran lay gasping in the sand, eyes wet with tears he would later be punished for shedding. "I'm sorry," Joran whispered. Tertius said nothing. He helped Joran stand because survival required it. Treci interrogation practicum. In the afternoon they learned questions. A woman was brought in. She was young, younger than the boys. Her hands were bound, her face bruised. A symbol had been carved into her forehead, a crude, 8-pointed star. "Heretics lie," Kyle said. "Truth must be extracted." Each boy was allowed one question. Wrong questions resulted in pain. Tertius stepped forward when called. He studied her face. The fear, the defiance. "What did they promise you?" he asked. She laughed, blood on her teeth. "Freedom." The shock field activated. She screamed. Kyle tilted his head. "Better," he said, "but incomplete." Tertius nodded. He leaned closer. "Who taught you the word freedom?" Her eyes widened. She spoke. "Fourth evening prayer." That night, Tertius knelt alone in the chapel of unnumbered names. Candles burned before an altar made of melted weapons. Names were carved into every surface, millions of them, overlapping, unreadable. Inquisitors, acolytes, assets, casualties. The emperor watched from behind the altar, his face serene, his eyes empty. Tertius prayed, not for mercy, not for forgiveness, for clarity. When he finished, Kale was there. "You did well today," the preceptor said. Tertius bowed his head. "Do you know why you are here?" Kyle asked. "Because my parents died in his service," Tertius recited. "No," Kale said. Tertius looked up. "You are here because you did not cry when they told you," Kale continued. "Because you watched today and learned. Because you understand that love is a weakness, but duty endures." He removed the rosette from his throat. For a moment, Tertius could not breathe. "One day," Kyle said, placing it back, "you may earn one of these, and on that day, you will learn the final lesson." "What lesson is that, sir?" Tertius asked. Kyle's augmetic eye whirred softly. "That there are no good days," he said, "only necessary ones." The bell rang. Another average day ended. Tertius Hale went to sleep dreaming not of toys or laughter, but of questions, sharp enough to cut the galaxy open. And somewhere, very far away, the Emperor did not weep. Chapter 1. The Cull. The first boy died during morning inspection. His name was erased before breakfast. They stood in the Hall of Measure, naked except for purity cords tied around their wrists and necks. The cords itched. That was intentional. Discomfort sharpened attention. Servo arms descended from the ceiling, clicking softly as they scanned bone density, organ growth, neural response. A needle punched into Tertius's spine. He did not flinch. The boy to his right did. The needle withdrew. A red rune flashed above the boy's head. Substandard. No one moved. The preceptor physician consulted a data slate. Emotional instability, elevated cortisol, latent defiance markers. The boy opened his mouth. "Please." The bolt round hit him in the chest, not the head. Cheaper, slower. He collapsed, blood splashing across the floor markings. A servitor dragged the body away, smearing red across the aquila etched into the stone. "Clean the floor," the preceptor said calmly. Tertius fetched the rags. This was how you learned the first truth of the Inquisition. Survival is not merit, it is opportunity. Chapter 2. Names are weakness. They stopped using names that week. Each boy was assigned a number. Tertius became Subject 19 Theta. Names encouraged attachment. Attachment encouraged hesitation. Hesitation killed worlds. They were taught this lesson through repetition. A man was brought into the lecture chamber, an administratum adept, pale, shaking, clutching a data scroll to his chest. "This man authorized a shrine repair," Kyle said. "The shrine contained an unverified saint." The adept sobbed. "I didn't know. The paperwork." "Silence," Kyle snapped. He turned to the boys. "Interrogate." They asked questions in sequence, voices flat, emotionless. When the adept finally broke, when he screamed the truth, that the shrine had whispered to him, that it had promised protection, that it knew his name, Kyle nodded. "Correct procedure," he said. Then he executed the adept anyway. Tertius watched closely. Truth was not salvation. Truth was ammunition. Chapter 3. Fire Drill. They were 12 when the first live incursion happened. The alarm screamed through the scholar. Not a drill. Not a test. A cult cell had breached the lower vaults. The boys were issued las pistols with 3 shots each. "3 is enough," the drill abbot said. "If it isn't, you're already dead." Smoke filled the corridors. Screams echoed through stone halls that had never known fear before, only discipline. Tertius moved with his squad, pulse steady, mind empty. They found the cultists chanting around a torn bulkhead. Warp light bled through the metal like pus. One cultist turned. Tertius shot him in the throat. The man gurgled, clawing at his neck, eyes wide with betrayal, like he hadn't expected a child. The second cultist charged. Joran hesitated. "Again!" Tertius fired his second shot. The third cultist laughed and raised a knife. Tertius used his last shot. Afterward, they stood in the aftermath, smoke curling around them, bodies cooling at their feet. Kyle arrived. He surveyed the dead. "Acceptable," he said. Joran was shaking. Kyle noticed. "Why are you afraid?" Kyle asked him. I killed someone." Kyle drew his pistol and shot Joran through the eye. "Now you have," he said. He turned to Tertius. "You did not hesitate," Kyle said. "Why?" Tertius thought carefully. "Because they were already dead," he said. "They just didn't know it yet." Kyle's augmetic eye clicked. "Good," he said. That night, Tertius dreamed of fire and woke smiling. Chapter 4. The Oath Knife. On his 13th naming day, Tertius was given a knife. Its blade was blackened, its edge monomolecular, its handle was wrapped in skin. Human. Inquisitor Kyle carried this as an acolyte, the chaplain said. "It has ended 3 bloodlines." Tertius took it. The blade hummed softly, eager. "Swear," the chaplain commanded. Tertius cut his palm and let the blood drip onto the altar. "I swear to seek the truth," he said. "I swear to burn lies. I swear to be feared more than the enemy." The knife drank his blood. Somewhere deep in the scholar, something laughed. Chapter 5. Graduation. Only 7 survived to the end, 7 out of 32. They stood before the sealed doors of the scholar's deepest vault. Kyle faced them. "You are not acolytes," he said. "You are not soldiers. You are not human in the way you were born." The doors opened. Beyond them waited the galaxy, burning. "Welcome," Kyle said softly, "to your first real day." Tertius Hale learned the weight of a rosette by carrying it for someone else. Inquisitor Kale did not trust ship's captains, administratum clerks, or planetary governors. He trusted gravity, fear, and momentum. Tertius carried the momentum. They arrived at Hive Vantrell, a spire world choking on incense and recycled air. Billions lived stacked atop one another, praying in shifts so the noise never stopped. The planet had reported deviant liturgical variants. Kyle called it heresy. The first execution happened on the landing pad. A dockworker knelt, hands bound, still wearing his rebreather. He had sung the Canticle of the Martyr out of sequence. A minor error, one syllable late. Kyle handed Tertius a bolt pistol. "Correct it," he said. Tertius shot the man in the face. The skull ruptured like overripe fruit. Blood and teeth sprayed across the deck. No one screamed. They had learned. Kyle nodded once. "Proceed." That was how the day began. The chapel had been sealed for 20 years. It was still warm inside. Bodies hung from chains, arranged in a spiral that descended toward the altar. Each corpse was flayed in a slightly different pattern, skin pinned open like a book. Words were carved into muscle and fat. Prayers rewritten, reordered, improved. Tertius moved quickly, pistol raised. A cultist leapt from behind the altar, screaming praise to the Emperor in a voice that was almost right. Almost. Tertius shot him twice in the chest and once in the head. He did not wait for confirmation. Another cultist tried to run. Tertius threw his knife. It took the man in the spine. He dropped, screaming, dragging himself across the stone floor, leaving a red trail that ruined a mosaic of St. Basilius. Tertius walked up and ended him with a single shot. Kyle watched silently. "Why kill him?" Kyle asked. "He was fleeing," Tertius replied. "No," Kyle said. "Why kill him immediately?" Tertius thought. "Because interrogation would spread the pattern," he said. He had already shared it. Kyle smiled thinly. "Good," he said. "Fire cleans faster than questions." They burned the chapel with promethium. The screaming lasted 9 minutes. The confessor did not deny it. He sat in the interrogation chair, hands folded, eyes calm. He had been a holy man for 40 years. He had heard millions of confessions. He had guided governors and generals. "I altered the prayer," he said, "just a little." Kale circled him. "Why?" "Because the people were tired," the confessor said. "They needed hope." Kyle stopped. Hope, a dangerous word. Tertius stepped forward. "Who taught you?" he asked. The confessor smiled sadly. "No one. That's the worst part." The confession chamber shook as psychic dampeners activated. Kyle nodded to Tertius. "Break him." Tertius activated the pain engine. The confessor screamed, then prayed, then begged, then laughed. When he finally spoke again, it was to say, "The Emperor never wanted this." Tertius didn't hesitate. He shot him through the heart. Kyle raised an eyebrow. "He hadn't finished," Kyle said. "He had," Tertius replied. "That thought spreads." Kyle studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Acceptable deviation," he said. The executions triggered a riot. They always did. Hive citizens flooded the lower levels, screaming prayers, waving icons, begging for forgiveness they hadn't earned. Kyle gave the order. "Exemplify." Arbites fired into the crowd. Heavy bolters stitched red lines through bodies. Limbs flew. Blood pooled in the streets and clogged drainage systems older than the Imperium itself. Tertius moved through it like a functionary. A woman grabbed his leg, sobbing, clutching a child to her chest. "Please," she cried. "He's innocent." Tertius shot the child first. The woman's scream cut off when he shot her too. Innocence was not a defense. Kyle watched from an elevated platform. "You are learning," he said over the vox. "Yes, Inquisitor," Tertius replied, stepping over the bodies. That night, Kale summoned Tertius alone. They stood aboard the black ship, Lex Talionis, stars bleeding past the viewports. "You will lead the next purge," Kyle said. Tertius did not react. A full hab block, Kyle continued. 30,000 souls. The taint is minor but persistent. Yes, Inquisitor. Kyle leaned closer. Do you feel anything when you kill them? Tertius considered. No, he said. Should I? Kyle smiled, genuinely this time. No, he said. That comes later. He pressed a smaller rosette into Tertius's hand. Not full authority, but enough to damn a city. Welcome, Acolyte, Kyle said. Make it quick. Tertius gave the order at dawn. Promethium flooded the hab block. Doors sealed, windows fused, vox channels filled with screams, prayers, curses, and silence. Tertius watched the thermal readouts climb. 30,000 lives ended in under 6 minutes. Efficient. When it was done, Kyle placed a hand on Tertius's shoulder. You did not ask for proof, Kyle said. Why? Because belief is the disease, Tertius replied. Action is the cure. Kale's augmetic eye whirred. Good, he said. One day that will be turned on you. Tertius nodded. He hoped it would be soon. The miracles began on Gathalamor Minor, a shrine world that had never mattered. They never start on important worlds. The reports were simple, clean, and wrong. Crime down 37%. Work output up 11. Self-flagellation incidents reduced. Tithe quotas exceeded for the first time in 80 years. And no sign of chaos. That was the problem. Tertius read the data slates in silence as the Lex Talionis cut through the void. Kyle watched him from across the strategium, augmetic eye clicking softly. Read the testimonies, Kyle said. Tertius did. They spoke of a new prayer, shorter, sharper, easier to remember. It removed redundancies, clarified intent. It worked. People slept better after reciting it. They obeyed faster. They felt seen. Tertius closed the slate. This is heresy, he said. Kyle nodded. Of course. Then why hasn't the planet collapsed? Tertius asked. Kyle smiled thinly. That, he said, is the danger. They found the saint alive. Saint Harlix was a man in his early 40s with burned hands and a voice ruined by smoke. He lived in a plain hab near the central basilica. No guards, no ostentation. When Tertius entered, Halix knelt immediately. I did not seek sainthood, Halix said. I only corrected mistakes. Tertius shot him in the knee. Halix screamed and collapsed. Miracles are unauthorized, Tertius said. Speak carefully. Halix gritted his teeth, blood pooling beneath him. I hear the Emperor more clearly when the words are right. Kyle circled them slowly. Describe clearly, Kyle said. Halix swallowed. The Emperor is tired. Kale stopped moving. Tertius raised his pistol. Halix rushed on, desperate. Not weak, not false, just distant, like a signal buried in noise. I removed the noise. Tertius felt something cold settle behind his eyes. How? He asked. Halix looked at him. Really looked. I listened, he said. Tertius executed him with a single shot to the head. The miracle reports continued afterward. Burning the basilica didn't stop it. Arresting the clergy didn't stop it. Executing entire choir districts didn't stop it. The prayer spread anyway, mouth to mouth, memory to memory. No texts, no icons, nothing to seize. People whispered it before work. Soldiers muttered it before firing. Suicide rates dropped. Faith hardened. Kale authorized containment escalation theta. That meant flame units. Tertius led the purge personally. They burned hospitals first, places where gratitude gathered. Patients died screaming in beds. Doctors tried to shield them and burned too. Then schools. Then manufactoria. Each fire made the prayer stronger. The people didn't riot. They endured. That terrified Tertius more than any mob ever had. Kyle ordered a halt. They stood in orbit above a world still burning, still functioning. Say it, Kyle said suddenly. Tertius turned. Say what? The prayer, Kale said. You've heard it. Tertius stiffened. That is forbidden. Kyle stepped closer. I am your Inquisitor. Tertius hesitated. Just long enough. He recited it. It was efficient, clean. It stripped away metaphor and left only purpose. The Emperor was not a father, not a god, not a savior. He was function. When Tertius finished, the silence felt heavier than gunfire. Kyle exhaled slowly. Do you feel different? Kyle asked. No, Tertius said. That was a lie. The conclave convened remotely. 3 Inquisitors, 2 Hereticus, 1 Malleus, faces fractured by augmetics and old scars. Kyle spoke first. This faith improves compliance, Kyle said. Therefore it competes with the Imperium. It must be erased. The Malleus Inquisitor inclined his head. Agreed. 1. Hereticus paused. If it strengthens loyalty, she said, is it truly heresy? Silence. Kyle turned to Tertius. Recommendation, Kyle said. Tertius felt the prayer press against his teeth, begging to be used. He crushed it. Exterminatus, Tertius said. Total, memory purge, orbital cleansing. The vote was unanimous. Gathalamor Minor died in holy fire. Billions burned so the Imperium would not improve incorrectly. Later alone, Tertius scrubbed his hands until the skin split. The prayer still worked. That was the worst part. Kyle watched him from the doorway. You chose correctly, Kyle said. Yes, Tertius replied. Kyle tilted his head. You don't sound convinced. Tertius looked up. If the Emperor spoke tomorrow, Tertius said, and told us to stop. Kyle shot the wall beside his head. If the Emperor speaks, Kyle said coldly, it will be through us, or not at all. He holstered the pistol. Sleep, Kyle said. Tomorrow we hunt a cardinal. Tertius nodded. That night, he dreamed of fire that did not burn, and woke afraid of how much he missed it. The summons came encoded in triplicate and sealed with blood. That meant accusation. Inquisitor Kyle read it once and deleted it. His augmetic eye made a sound like grinding glass. They've noticed, he said. Tertius stood at attention. Who? Inquisitor Militant Seraphine Caudal, Kyle replied. Hereticus, old blood. Clean record. Dangerous. What is the charge? Tertius asked. Kyle smiled without humor. Innovation. That was worse than heresy. Cardinal Pyrex ruled Volgrad Secundus, a world of steel cathedrals and marching choirs. His sermons were flawless, his loyalty metrics pristine, his private prayers were not. Tertius discovered that within 6 minutes of arrival, hidden beneath the altar was a chamber of mirrors and censers, incense thick with psychoactive residue. Pyrex knelt there nightly, whispering prayers that almost matched orthodoxy. Not chaos, not rebellion, optimization. Kyle arrived behind Tertius, boots echoing. Say it, Kyle murmured. This is deviation, Tertius said. Minor. Then why are you afraid? Kyle asked. Tertius realized his hands were shaking. They did not get time to decide. Inquisitor Caudal arrived with Arbite's gunships and a full writ of authority. She was tall, armored in black and crimson, her rosette unadorned, her face scarred by burns that had never healed properly. She did not greet Kyle. Acolyte hail, she said, eyes never leaving Kale. Step away. Tertius did not move. Your mentor stands accused of doctrinal contamination, Caudal continued. He will submit to censure. Kale said nothing. Tertius felt the galaxy narrow to a single moment. If Kale was taken, he would not return. If Caudal was resisted, this became treason. There was no correct choice. Only necessary ones. Tertius drew his pistol. Everyone froze. Not Kyle, not Caudal. Everyone else. Explain, Caudal said calmly. The Cardinal, Tertius said. He is compromised. Caudal's gaze flicked toward the altar. Evidence? Enough, Tertius said. Kale's augmetic eye whirred sharply. You are overreaching, Caudle warned. Tertius pulled the trigger. The bolt round detonated Cardinal Pyrex's chest, spraying sanctified blood across the altar and mirrors. The psychoactive incense ignited. Flame roared up the walls. Caudle stared at the corpse. Tertius did not lower the weapon. Containment failure prevented, he said. By my authority. Silence. Then Caudle laughed once, sharp and humorless. You don't have that authority, she said. I do now, Tertius replied. He triggered the melter charges. The cathedral collapsed inward, burying saints, civilians, arbites, and doctrine beneath molten stone. Kyle watched the inferno in silence. They stood amid the ruins, ash falling like snow. Caudle turned slowly toward Tertius. You've damned yourself, she said. Yes, Tertius replied. She studied him for a long time. Then she reached up and removed her rosette. She dropped it into the ash. You chose without orders, she said, without confirmation, without fear. She turned to Cale. He's yours, she said, if he lives long enough. She left without another word. Cale approached Tertius. You understand what you've done, Kyle said. Yes, Tertius replied. I can't be corrected now. Kyle nodded. That's what makes you useful. They returned to the Lex Talionis. No ceremony, no witnesses. Kyle placed a rosette in Tertius's hand. It was heavier than expected. This grants you the right to burn worlds, Kyle said, and the obligation to answer for them. Tertius closed his fingers around it. What happens to you? He asked. Kyle smiled faintly. I become expendable. For the first time, Tertius felt something like loss. He crushed it immediately. Tertius did not sleep. He stood in the strategium, staring at a list of systems flagged for potential deviation. He selected one at random. A mining world, low population, stable tithes. No evidence, no reports. He issued the order anyway. Exterminatus pattern, cyclonic torpedoes. Reason logged, preventative purity. The weapons fired, the planet cracked. Tertius watched it die without blinking. Kyle stood beside him. You didn't need to do that, Kyle said quietly. Yes, Tertius replied. I did. Kyle said nothing more. Later, alone, Tertius removed the rosette and set it on the table. It was already stained. He realized then that the prayer, the efficient one, no longer tempted him. He had surpassed it. The Imperium did not need better faith. It needed faster judgment, and Tertius Hale was very fast now. The designation arrived encoded as a blessing. Extremis diabolus, provisional. Tertius Hale read it twice. The words meant monster, spoken politely. A warning to others, a promise to him. Kyle stood across the strategium, thinner now, posture rigid, augmetic eye flickering under strain. They will hunt you, Cale said. They already are, Tertius replied. 3 Inquisitors had gone silent in the last month. One declared renegade, one executed by their own acolytes, one erased so thoroughly that even his astropathic echo was gone. Patterns were forming. Tertius approved them. They took Kyle on Virex 9, a world of ash seas and reliquary cities. Inquisitor Caudle returned with a conclave sanction and enough firepower to flatten continents. She did not smile this time. Kyle did not resist. That hurt more than if he had. Tertius watched from orbit as Kyle was dragged into a null cell, psychic dampeners screaming as they locked. He felt the absence like a missing limb. Kyle had been compromised. That was the official record. Tertius authored it himself. They let Tertius attend. That was their mistake. Kyle was bound to the throne of needles, flesh pierced, augmetics screaming as feedback surged through them. He looked smaller, older, still calm. You taught him too well, Caudle said. Kyle smiled weakly. I taught him exactly enough. She turned to Tertius. Ask him, she said. Ask if he believes himself pure. Tertius stepped forward. "Do you?" he asked. Kyle met his gaze. "No," Kyle said, "but purity is inefficient." Caudle nodded. "You see?" Tertius nodded too. Then he shot Kale through the heart. The room erupted in shouting. Tertius raised his rosette. "Contamination neutralized," he said, "by my authority." No one stopped him. They never did, once the words were said aloud. The Ordo fractured within weeks. Some called Tertius a necessary blade. Others called him the proof that the Inquisition had rotted past saving. Kill teams were deployed. Worlds burned in proxy wars disguised as purges. Tertius moved constantly, never staying long enough to be targeted, never leaving witnesses who could testify coherently. He burned rival supply lines. He exposed secrets that forced exterminations. He let chaos cults rise just enough to justify annihilating entire sectors that questioned authority. Order returned. Brutal, clean, absolute. The Emperor's light did not flicker. It narrowed. The High Lords demanded his presence. That meant they were afraid. Tertius declined. Instead, he sent them data, compliance metrics, reduced rebellion curves, stabilized warp routes. He sent them results. Then he sent them a threat, 1 planet per objection. They stopped objecting. Years later, though time meant little now, Tertius stood alone in the chapel of unnumbered names. He added 2 more. Kyle, Cordell. He knelt before the Emperor's statue. For the first time since childhood, he spoke without litany. "If you never wanted saving," Tertius said quietly, "then this is what you wanted instead." The Emperor did not answer. That was permission enough. They stopped calling him Inquisitor. They called him Solution. Entire conclaves deferred to his judgment. Not because he was right, but because he was final. He no longer investigated heresy. He prevented it. Entire populations were culled based on probability curves and doctrinal drift models. The galaxy grew quieter, bleaker, more obedient. The bell rang. Tertius woke before it finished. He reviewed casualty figures while dressing. He authorized 3 purges before breakfast. He drank recaf that tasted like ash. He executed an acolyte who hesitated. He saved a sector by erasing 1 billion lives. He did not think about it. That was the point. Somewhere, centuries later, a child knelt in a cold dormitory beneath a carved aquila. A rosette lay waiting in a vault. The galaxy still burned, but it burned correctly, and that was enough.